Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a show about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri Lauren. And Lauren, what is killing me today is just how accurate polling can be when you are asking the right questions. Did you see Joe Person from The Athletic release this, it had to be 24 question survey that he put out there to Carolina Panthers fans?
I did. I haven't read all of it yet, but I did see that because I was immediately they were like fan opinion divided on DaveCanales, BryceYoung, not so much on DaveTepper. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Got it.
This is what I mean by all you have to do is ask. There is nothing that you would have gotten from this survey that you would not have already gotten if you have been listening to this show. And I think you and I are pretty good representation of just what people see with this team with their own two eyes, right? You see that Bryce can do it, but until he actually does it, you're not going to believe that it's realistic, which seems to be what people think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and look, a lot of people are not unlike me, right?
Right.
We're very injured mentally. We have a lot of trauma, football related trauma. We're processing through. We are untrusting. Yes. We are unwell, and we're not gonna assume that something good would happen that we can't know for sure would. And a lot of times, even our known quantities that we assume are good, they let us down too. So we're just not in a position to expect good things in general.
Yeah. Well, let's go through some of this. Let's start with some of the questions about BryceYoung, because I would describe the response here as cautious optimism. I don't think that anybody would argue that he had a good rookie season. Even if you believe that a lot of it was the product of what was around him and his protection, he had a bad season, right? Less than 3,000 yards passing. 80% of the fan base believes that he is going to throw for more yards this year. I
would hope so.
Yeah, it's certainly. Well, that's part of it, right? It's hard to imagine with this coach and this playbook that he wouldn't. Not that he couldn't. It could always go wrong, but it's hard to imagine he wouldn't, just with if you just eliminate the uncertainty of who am I listening to from week to week.
Yeah, if you eliminate a coach that called play calls as if to do bad things to the offense, right, as opposed to good, and just having a year under all of those things. I just think there's no reason to think that things can't get a lot better, because things were also very terrible last year. So there's literally in that way, I guess it's almost in theory for Bryce, right? In theory, but we know better. But in theory, it'd be a great situation for Bryce, ideally, because it's wow, I did so terrible last year. There's literally nowhere to go but up.
Well,
literally.
See, I think that explains one of these things. The people that took this survey were given 5 options as the breakout, who will be the breakout star for the Panthers in 2024. And nobody got a majority, but Bryce overwhelmingly was ahead of everybody else. And I think it is, to your point, this is a second-year quarterback with a more, what's the right word for it? Maybe unorthodox quarterback-friendly coach. Someone that just does not look at Bryce and see, not an NFL quarterback, I'm not even calling plays for him. And on top of that, the weapons are better this year. It would be hard not to think that we should at least see improvement, if not, going from one of the 2 or 3 worst quarterbacks in the league to one of the 2 or 3 best.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. It was interesting too, with the way it was worded with Bryce. It was how confident are you that he's the long-term answer?
Right.
And I liked, it was very somewhat to be determined, not at all. And as you would expect, there are not very many varies or not at all. Most of the responses are somewhat or to be determined. I feel I'm more I feel somewhat is I like a lot of what I've seen, and I feel I see an NFL starter there, and the to be determined are the people that are look, no one would have flourished in that situation last year. However, I don't know that I saw a whole lot that I'm super psyched about. I kind of tend to be more in that camp, to be honest, than the other. But again, some of that is just I've been hurt a lot, and I'm not very trusting, but I mean, that's kind of where I'm at this point. I think you saw a lot more from other rookies in the past that you would go, oh yeah, like at least they have XYZ to hang their hat on, you know?
Yeah, I am in the somewhat convinced category, but I am inching closer to be determined because I have seen what Bryce can be in a functional team environment before, right? Like I've seen what he can be when things around him are right. I just don't know that you can trust. And part of this is the Panthers, and part of it is the nature of the NFL. You just can't trust that everything will get right or close enough to right quick enough for them not to have moved on from it.
That's my thing. He's Bama spoiled. You know?
100%. And on top of that, Matter Day spoiled. Like for people that don't know the reputation of Matter Day out in California, that is, I think I saw this yesterday because I just happened to look at the ESPN 300. I want to say, which is the 300 top high school seniors in the country.
Probably a lot from there.
I want to say 6 kids on that list are from Matter Day, which is like miles above any other school.
Yeah. I mean, it's no joke. I was going to say like what? I feel like a lot, we've seen like USC quarterbacks from there, just like all kinds of players have come from Matter Day. And like, so yeah, you're coming from a place where like winning is not only like, you know, fostered, it's expected and it's just the norm and it's just what you do. And so like to go from that to the Panthers, it was a concern of mine, to be honest, because we've seen it be an issue before with other quarterbacks coming to Carolina, like not understanding, oh, you could like Cam, I feel like fit in so well right away, at least in part because that dude had been through adversity.
That Auburn team was bad. Like without Cam, that Auburn team was bad.
But like that dude had been kicked out of school and gone to JUCO. Like he saw the end of everything for himself and what that could look like. And he had to fight his way all the way back. So like for him, he's like, oh, a crappy team, whatever. Yeah. And then Auburn, like you said, sucked. And so like he literally carried, I mean, it was unreal to watch what he did, you know? And so he's like, oh, I can carry a team. Like I'm special. And he went in there immediately knowing that. Whereas Bryce was just like, I wonder if even to some degree he's doubting, like, wait, was I just a part of like this already successful machinery? Or can I like be, you know,
and that's why like 54%, the majority of people that responded to this believe either somewhat or wholeheartedly that he can be the future of this franchise. And that's great. But I will tell you, in addition to my doubts about the Panthers in general, part of what gives me pause and ticks me down is sort of what you said. Like towards the end of the season, we saw him go from getting frustrated to very resigned that this is his reality now. And that's disappointing to see from anybody.
Yeah. And it's like, it shows he's like a human, which I understand, right? Like you saw him act more like a human, but I could tell that also made him uncomfortable in a way. Yeah. Like he doesn't like to act like, you know, he's a quarterback robot and has probably been trained for that since he figured out that's what he was going to be doing with the rest of his life. So for him, it's like, I can't show that kind of emotion. I always have to be there to pick my guys up. I always have to be this rah-rah guy. And you know me, like I love a complex emotional character out there on the field, even with my quarterback. Right. So I don't mind it, but if it's not natural for you and if it makes you feel uncomfortable and you're not going to be yourself out there from a player perspective when you're like that, then it's not good. And so like the frustration, like you said, it turned into like resignation. Cause I think he almost like didn't want to show the frustration somehow like that. He's not supposed to do that. And
I was about to say between now, granted, I don't know anything about Matter Day other than the reputation, but certainly coming from Nick Saban's Alabama, I would imagine that he probably was taught you're not allowed to show that at least at some point in his amateur career.
I mean, yeah, probably to a degrry, but like he's had, you know, it's not like he hasn't had people display emotion on his teams before.
For sure.
I think he has, you know, but I mean, it is just one of those things where, and you do look down on it from quarterbacks. I mean, sometimes people do. I think we're coming like a longer way now where we're almost back around to the point where like showing emotion is good, actually. Right. Maybe that's because when our favorite quarterback started doing it, we realized, oh, we actually have to be more accepting of this when Tom Brady hits a hissy fit on the sideline or gets in some dude's face. Like, oh, people are like clipping those videos and talking about how hypocritical we are for saying quarterback X shouldn't say, you know, so like, and for me, like, I want to see a fully fleshed, like, human being out in front of me. But again, like, sometimes people just need to operate in that emotionless mode, athletes especially. Some athletes thrive in that emotional place. Some athletes do the opposite and they let their emotions take over if they let them in too much. And so I think you started to see that at least a little bit. from Bryce by the end. Like literally, like why? That was what I would have been thinking. I would have been like, why am I doing this? Why am I putting my literal life in danger for a team that does not give a shit?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. So one thing you and I have been talking about a lot, especially as predictions have come in about this team being a dark horse this year, is why is nobody as focused on the problem at left tackle rather, as you and I are. Joe Person asked Panthers fans, what is the biggest concern for you about this team in 2024? Only 24% said Ike Ekwonu. That comes in second to the pass rush. 36% of respondents say that is what concerns them the most about the Panthers going into this season.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I guess I get it to a degree, right? Because you're losing 3 guys who were like responsible for most of your pass rush.
You're losing your talent leader and your emotional leader. 2 different guys, you lost them both.
I think, and I think like that's a natural response for if you'd ask people how you feel about the run game after they lost Christian McCaffrey, I'm sure they would have said similar, it's not as good. But at the same time, for me, I don't know. Yes, it's at least on paper, a concern, right? I'm not necessarily disagreeing, even with some of the additions. I think it's not quite where you would want to be. But at the same time, we saw this team cannot literally the defense could be the 85 Bears.
Yes.
And in 2 days NFL, they are not winning any football games if that offense can't function at a decent level. They're just not. And so for me, that's number one concern, really.
Yeah, me too, because I think it all was pretty clear, not even in the regular season, but in the preseason. Think back to that game against the Giants where Kayvon Thibodeau goes in completely untouched by Icky and gets that sack. That's this team at their very worst, and we saw that way more often than we saw them at their very best last season.
That was immediately our oh shit moment of oh no, wait, the O-line sucks more now? That's not good.
Right. And I think that one of the things that is for the reason for me that Icky is a no-brainer, should be way ahead of the pass rush, is because I'm a big fan of college football. Is my number one love. I love the draft because it's like graduation day to me.
Say goodbye to our special boys.
That's right. And so I'm reading stuff about it all the time. And everybody, every one of these way too early mock drafts, they just do the easy thing of let's make the draft order the same order from last year, right?
Right.
And everybody that I have read seems to assume that if the Panthers have the number 1 pick, either they're moving on from Bryce, or more likely they are adding a pass rusher. And I don't know if that is a product of that's the Panthers' biggest need, or the Panthers have this huge need at left tackle. And what do you do if you have a need at left tackle? A great one is not coming on the market as a free agent. Right. There really isn't one that you feel like is probably plug and play coming out in the draft this year. That's why I feel like Icky's got to get this right, or else we're really behind the 8 ball in terms of development, not just for Bryce, but for all of these young pieces on the offense.
Yeah, to me, it really kind of starts there. I mean, I hate to say that. That's what I think. And I saw so much I liked a lot in his rookie season and a lot I didn't like last year. And it, honestly, even if that can just meet in the middle this year,
agreed,
it would still be a lot better and a lot less of an issue. But it, you think oh, well, it's just a play here and there in a game, but it's not. They have so few possessions, so few drives, all of that. They don't have the opportunity. How many plays a game they run? It's probably not very many. And so the fact is, when you have a bust like that and he misses a guy and they get a huge sack or whatever, you're setting up the offense in an almost impossible situation with its current personnel.
Yes.
And you have to be able to have good progress on first and second down. That's why you saw them running so much more at the end of the year. People were like, why don't they let Bryce throw more? It's because they can't. They literally can't. They don't have time.
Yes.
They have to run the ball if they want to move it forward towards the chains. Not away from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in a year when, look, maybe Leggett and Johnson are going to be great yard after catch kind of receivers. Awesome. We think Chuba Hubbard at least will begin the year at the top of the depth chart in with the running backs. We'll get into this a little bit more later, but they're going to start Jonathan Brooks on not the physically unable to perform list. It's the other list that you can come off of during the year. But if he is not off of that list before the end of training camp, he can't come off until week 5. We don't know what Miles Sanders' standing is. We don't know how healthy Rashard Penny is. Like, it's very important that you keep your quarterback upright, because it might be more necessary this year than even last year in terms of getting the ball down the field.
Let me ask you something too, because I literally just thought of this. Do you know what people thought about Brooks as a blocker?
I know that they are optimistic. Yeah, I know that they are optimistic on him because he does not have like a long history of taking a lot of hits, because Bijan was like a one-man show when he was the Texas starter.
Well, there are some running backs who just like innately suck.
Yeah, that was the thing that I was going to say. I don't know what his reputation is in terms of like the skill level. I know it is that he is coming in a little less worn down than your average star college running back.
And there some wide receivers as well. There's some wide receivers who are great blockers. Some running backs who are really good in pass pro. Like, for instance, like Javonte Williams from UNC. Like, I remember they were both of those backs that UNC had that year were like really good in pass pro, and that helped them with teams, because if you can't, that's the other part with running backs. Like, we can like Brooks all we want, and like hopefully he stays healthy. And I'm already like, oh, he's already on a list. I mean, I get it. He has to be because of his injury, but it's just it's already like, oh, this is going to be a whole thing, you know. And I don't love it, and that was my concern to begin with. And it just kind of is what it is. I know, but it's like,
when you're talking about a survey this long that is taken by nearly 1,000 people, obviously there are going to be some questions that are skipped over, right? Like, everybody's going to skip over something. The question that the fewest people skipped over in this survey is, give Dave Tepper a letter grade as the owner of the Panthers. 84% of the fan base gives him a D or below, which seems like a no-brainer to me, right? I don't even know how you go up to C. But Lauren, there were 6 people that took this survey.
It said
Dave Tepper deserves an A. I had not considered that it is the Tepper family. I've been sitting here since I read this last week thinking this has to be 6 people that were convinced they would be the only one to give him an A, and they would be in the Troll Hall of Fame for this team, right?
I was just thinking that too. I was like, maybe, right? Like, maybe that was part of it, of like people just like messing around. Because I'm like, unless his like family and or friends or that guy with him when he went to talk at the restaurant about
his muscle,
right? Like, maybe that guy. I don't know, but I don't know. Like, I'm sorry, like, I don't know what the A would be based on. Literally, like, even if you like David Tepper, I don't know how you would go A.
Oh, okay, so I gave myself, over the weekend on a bike ride, I gave myself the mental task of let's assume these are not trolls.
Yeah.
Let's assume they are not members of the Tepper family. Let's assume these 6 people have seen something that makes them think, oh, this is a good owner. What on earth do these lunatics have to point to other than second richest owner in the league?
Maybe they got the paper for like when the lead up to the practice facility was happening.
Sure.
And then just stopped getting it.
Okay. Possible.
You know,
possible.
After that. And so they have no idea that and like back then it was like, you know, things are going decently. Like this guy, you know, he had brought Cam back by that point. So a lot of people were like, okay, maybe. Like, there were still like some doubters, but a lot of people were like, well, at least he kind of gets it from that perspective. And there's like there's this, you know, so I don't know. Maybe they just like went into a time machine or whatever, or like just heard no other news of David Tepper after a certain point years ago.
All right. So there are 2 things that I came up with. I would not say these are worthy of A's, but there are 2 things I came up with that I thought, okay, I guess if I were thinking that way, I could find my way to liking Dave Tepper a little more than I do right now.
Okay.
Number 1, you are the world's biggest Billy Joel fan. Because
I was like, Billy Joel, maybe?
I don't think anyone has played Bank of America Stadium more since the Teppers brought music to Charlotte than Billy Joel. So that's one.
Okay.
The other is, you could make the argument that if something isn't working, he is not so stubborn that he won't just pull the plug. Obviously, the flip side to that is he has pulled more plugs than he has put in. I don't know that you could say that that's a good thing, but
I don't think right. Like, I guess you could say, I was going to say, that's the only thing I could think of as well, right? Is that like Jerry Richardson was well known for like not doing that. When
and like you look at the NFL, like obviously there's been decades of disappointment with the Cowboys, right? But think about all those years that it felt like they were right there and Jerry Jones wouldn't even hear of moving on from Jason Garrett, right? Like, so at least it's not that, like, at least he's not that kind of owner, but I don't know that that's enough to overshadow the bad.
Right. And the other problem with that is like the fact that he has to keep moving on so quickly is bad. And I also think it did not serve them well from a quarterback perspective, in my opinion, either.
Agreed.
I thought, I don't know where this franchise, I don't know if this franchise is in like a super different place if they keep Teddy Bridgewater for another year, but I don't know that it's in this hellhole either. And maybe it still is, but I think at least there's a better year somewhere, I think, in that mix in terms of quarterback play than we've seen.
Is it in a different place? And a different place might be literally a step or two ahead of where they are right now. So I'm not talking about top of the division versus where they are right now, but
just
are
like
they
had more success?
Yeah. And here's my question. Are they in a better place if they had gone out and gotten a DaveCanales type offensive coordinator to go with Baker Mayfield? Like, I think we've seen since he left Charlotte, the dude wasn't washed up. It just was, he's just a guy that needs a very specific kind of voice in his ear. And that was not available in Charlotte.
So yes and no. You kind of know a little bit of how I feel about Baker.
I feel the same way.
I don't dislike him as a person necessarily. Like, he's not my favorite person, but with the time he was here, I was like, oh, you weren't built for this.
Right.
Even though he's been with the Browns. Like, so you would think like, oh, that dude's seen it all. No, like he wasn't, like, we just don't abide a lot of like his nonsense here as much. We don't have don't just be terrible and say you're sorry and that's it. Let's just all move on. Or like say you're trying your best and you want to play better and we'll just all move on. But like, don't get up there and be like, make excuses or like blame. You know what I mean? Like, don't just get up there and like whine about it. Just go up there and say like, you're going to try to do better, or like, don't complain about the fans doing whatever or anything else. Like, just shut up and play. Like,
no, listen, I told you, you, Lauren, and you, the guys and gals that are listening, he's what made it easy for me to cut the cord on the Buccaneers. Like, to me, he's the ultimate, like, we're not trying to win, but we're also not trying to tank sort of quarterback. He's not somebody you can rally behind, but
he's in the I can change him club, you know.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And certainly keeping someone around like Matt Rule makes you more susceptible to that kind of I can change him thinking. Real quick, do want to wrap up on the game day experience. Man, people hate the ticket prices. 58% say it is unaffordable, and I wonder if it is that overwhelming if the team is not this bad. I still think it is, because it is not cheap to take your family to an NFL game, no matter who it is.
So how much would it cost to sit like in, I don't know, the 200s?
I guess it depends on where we're talking. If we're saying 200s, like in the end zone, you're still probably talking 100, 110 per person just for the ticket. Yeah,
look, you're going to need people to get bargain. Like, people aren't going to, I'm not paying $100 for this Carolina Panthers football team.
Yeah.
Like, I've never understood why guys won't give at least like a little bit of like, oh, we suck now.
Yeah.
Maybe we should knock a little bit off this. But no, instead they're like, oh, prices are going to go up. It's like, well, buy.
Yeah, okay? Exactly. Exactly. Like we saw this, or I guess I was reading this story very similar to with the NFL and what you are talking about, oh, yeah, no, the team's not good, but prices are going up. Like there are a lot of financial analysts that now are wondering if that is why, since the pandemic, not just people traveling less or traveling to different places, but also like Disney never cut their prices when half of the park was closed. And so did that give people this long, like 3-year reputation of they just are not going to give you nearly worth what you paid for to be there?
Fair, having been to Disney during the pandemic,
it's
not my choice, by the way. I was there, but it's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
it was awesome. It was one of the
sure.
best. Like, it was, I would have paid extra for that specific experience if we had been asked. And instead, we got to do it for the same price without the lines, just going straight through everything. It was like the dream. It was like literally like winning a day at the park for like you and your friends.
Yeah. See, all right. So I was there right after things started to open up again, and you're paid full price to go to Epcot where 4 things were open. Like we
didn't go to Epcot, to be fair. Yeah, we just, but like all the other parks, like most of the stuff was open.
Yeah,
and it was like no wait,
right?
Just unless they were like one time we had to wait on the Haunted Mansion because they were like deep cleaning it for a little bit, and then they let everybody back on, and I'm just like, this rules. Like
literally the opposite of the appeal of the Haunted Mansion.
Well, fair, but maybe during those times it was a little more like, but it was just like, this is the only way I want to do Disney forever. Like, I'm good now as an adult. I don't need to go back. I almost feel like I'm so glad I went and had this kind of experience where I will remember it. And like, but I hear what you're saying. Like, so in that way, it'd be like almost enhanced. But I don't know that my Panthers fan experience, in fact, I know that it wouldn't be enhanced if there are fewer people there.
Yeah.
So it would be the opposite of enhanced, in fact.
Yeah. No singing bears or pirates at Panthers game.
I think it's a lot of things, right? It is inflation. Also, like concerts.
Sure.
Have you seen how much it costs to go to a concert?
I tried to take Annie to see Olivia Rodrigo in DC on Saturday. We could not find people selling tickets for less than $700 a piece. And don't get me wrong, I'm down with Olivia Rodrigo, but not $700 a piece.
No, like you have to like sell your organs to go see some of these people, and like that's just so. Again, if you have to contend with that, and like you want to save up money to go to like a concert you really want to go to, or like you even mentioned travel. Like I feel like people are traveling a lot more. You want to go on a trip, like you're not gonna blow like almost $1,000 to take your family to an NFL game, especially when the team stinks, and you could just watch from home on your TV and like pay attention to your fantasy team or whatever the hell else, or Twitter and the memes. Like instead, sorry.
100%. I tell my son all the time, there is no stadium experience that is as good as that 90-inch TV we have downstairs and those big comfortable couches. Like that is as good a way as you will ever see a game. Want to remind everybody, as you are hearing this, we are exactly 1 month away from the Sports Podcast Festival presented by Breeze Through at the Rialto. Lauren, I'm very excited by the conversations I've had with not just the folks at the Shutdown Fullcast, but the folks at Hand in the Dirt, as well as our friends at Home Field who are presenting the official after party for the show. This is going to be, I don't want to say once in a lifetime. A, because I don't want to oversell it, but B, the plan is it is not going to be once in a lifetime. This is the beginning of a new tradition, but I am really enthusiastic for people to see the show that we have put together. And even though this team is killing us, is not doing a show from the Sports Podcast Festival, Lauren and I will be a part of the festivities all night long.
I was going to say, like, there are too many Falcons fans and that might be triggering, but I guess they're really, I think most of them have denounced the Falcons even by now. Maybe not Jason.
I was about to say, I know Jason is still a pretty strong Falcons fan. I think Ryan is an Eagles fan, if I remember.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
The rest of them know better, which I respect.
Right. And then, of course, we'll have Felder with Hand in the Dirt, who I'm sure will have, I know he will have some strong opinions on the Panthers. He texts them to me every weekend.
Felder's like, why do you do this to yourself?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly, like, he has texted me multiple times during games to ask, do you feel good about the choice you made with your podcast right now?
And you're like, obviously not.
Right, exactly. The easiest thing to do to get tickets is to use the Shutdown Fullcast site, preownedairboats.com, or go to the Rialto's page, and you can click to get tickets there. Saturday, August the 24th, it's going to start at 6. And I believe we did the math. The show goes to 11. So it's a full night of entertainment, the Sports Podcast Festival presented by Breeze Through. And then also I do want to ask you to take the time to rate, review, and subscribe to this show. Whether you are watching on the OG Triangle Media YouTube page, whether you are listening on your favorite podcast platform, more interaction with the show means those algorithms spread it around to more people. And I think that as Panthers fans, we would all feel better if we knew more people were suffering right along with us.
Yeah, we're all ill, so let's be ill together.
That's right. That's right. This is the classic "they can't fire all of us" strategy that we are going for. So wherever you are watching or listening, take the time to make sure you are subscribed and like and leave a review. Lauren Brownlow, last year we talked about the lack of sense that the contract given to Miles Sanders made. Now, in 2022, Miles Sanders coming off a really good year with the Philadelphia Eagles, a big part of, I thought, was a big part of Jalen Hurts' development into one of the league's better quarterbacks. But now, a report from Cody Benjamin of CBS says as camp gets ready to begin in earnest, the belief amongst the people making these decisions is it will be hard for Miles Sanders to even find carries during training camp.
What?
Yeah, that Chuba Hubbard is, as we said, Chuba Hubbard's at the top of the depth chart. Even though he is on an ineligible list for games, that does not mean that Jonathan Brooks will not be doing some work during training camp. There is an evaluation process going on whether or not Rashard Penny is the guy. I think that all of this, Lauren, points to probably Miles Sanders at number 3 on the depth chart. And if he's at number 3 on the depth chart, doesn't it make more sense at that price tag to let him go?
Yeah. What? I'm like literally my brain was just turning. I'm like, what is the strategy here?
Right.
Like,
right.
Are you trying to trade him? Because right now I'm like, oh, I don't want that.
Yeah. I don't know.
Another team reading this, I'm like, ugh.
Well, that's the thing. What are you trading him for? What do you think the market is? I don't know.
I'm just saying, like, if you want, like, I'm literally trying to think, like, to what end?
Yeah,
like, why, if you have someone on your roster that's like you paid that much for, and you can't find a way to get him carries, I mean, I don't understand. What are we doing here?
Yeah, his base salary this year is going to be over $4 million. He will be a cap hit this year of close to $7.7 million. He's 27 years old. He is coming. We believe that by the end of the season, it was very clear he was much more significantly injured than he let on.
Yeah, especially
when the season began. Right. Yeah. So, with all of that being said, like, what are we waiting on? Just cut the guy. Let him find another opportunity. If it's out there, you're not going to find a trade partner for him with all of those factors in play.
Well, especially when you're out there talking like that. I'm sorry. Why? And they, by the way, it's not the first time they've done this where they're like, oh, this player sucks now. And then they'll be like, we can't find trade partners. Like, well, I wonder why, idiot.
Right. God. And look, the Panthers are not the only team to have to have created that kind of problem for themselves, right? Like, just talking shit about a guy's production. And look, to be fair, rightfully so. I know he was coming off of an injury, but
he wasn't.
You way overpaid. You could not possibly.
By the way, though, that's still a them problem.
Yes, that is a Panthers problem.
Miles Sanders problem.
That is a Panthers problem. Yes, but you can correct it by just moving on. Yes. My question, and this is
this like sunk cost fallacy? Like, I don't understand.
So this is the thing, right? Like, I don't know enough about the way his contract is structured and the salary cap works. Right. To say,
is
like,
he a cap hit regardless is what I was
and how long does it go on for? Because he signed a 4-year deal before last year, which would have taken him up to 30 years old, which already was not super bright.
Idiots. Like,
right. So how much dead cap are we talking?
Like, really, literally, I'm sorry. It's like, it's more upsetting every time I think about it. Like, he's 27 and last year, like, hear yourself, hear that if you work for the Panthers and feel shame that you did that. If you did that,
Lauren, like, 4 years, $25.5 million
for a running back in today's National Football League. Okay,
right.
I'm going full like announcer voice with that one. All right. Like, what are you on drugs? Are you unwell?
I think that the best case scenario for him, best case scenario for the Panthers, if he stays on the roster, is number 3, right? You didn't draft Jonathan Brooks to not supplant Chuba when he's ready.
Speaking of unwell, he might not be well enough
for
a while. So that's part of it, is you keep Miles around until you're sure that Brooks is like healthy enough to take more workload on.
And that's a possibility. You know, the other thing that
I'm Miles Sanders, I'm thrilled to hear it.
Yeah, well, look, and this is the other part too, right? You got to carry 3 running backs on that roster, and Rashard Penny is more beat up than Miles Sanders is. There's a reason that he went from possible star to available like that in the NFL.
Talk about a guy with a workload now.
Yeah, seriously.
That guy had a workload, okay? that guy has some tread on those tires. Like,
yeah,
he's getting the warning light is on.
Yeah, I really liked him when he was coming out of San Diego State.
Sure,
and clearly
I was concerned about how much he
well, I was about to say, clearly Pete Carroll liked him too, because for 2 years there was no other play in the Seattle Seahawks playbook.
No, and he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not, I mean, with him being one of like 4 or whatever, I have no issue with it. But it's still like, okay, so these are the hopes and dreams being pinned on 3 injured guys. And
that's right.
Again, cool.
Lauren, I want to end the show on a positive note, because sometimes we dally. We wallow in the negativity around this team, both you and I. So let's talk about last week's very public love affair between Russell Okung and DaveCanales. Did you see these tweets?
I did, and I'm not sure I fully understood.
Yeah, so This was Thursday and Friday. Russell Okung, who spent that one COVID season with the Panthers, but spent a lot of time with DaveCanales in Seattle.
I've always liked him.
Well, clearly he likes DaveCanales very much. I'm going to read you over the course of 2 days 3 different tweets he sent. This is the first one. When I played with the Seahawks, there was a coach whose optimism was painful. Always writing notes, knew Pete Carroll's culture like the back of his hand, even set up practice dummies perfectly on the field. Rarely saw him have a bad day. Turns out relentless positivity is a superpower. My teammates ridiculed him as a company man for meticulously straightening practice dummies. This coach knew every detail mattered to Pete Carroll. While others kicked dummies in jest, he would realign them perfectly. He saw the connection between small actions and overall culture. An older vet defended him, saying he's not a company man, he just understands how things work. Lesson: it's not about blind loyalty. It's about understanding the bigger picture. Those small things would create a future for him. Funny, he's now the head coach of an NFL team. Didn't name Canales specifically there, but that was who he was talking about, if you put all that together. The next tweet, this came the same day. Dan Quinn, Robert Saleh, DaveCanales, all focused, punctual, with incredible presence. But one thing separates them. So I knew this coach was different when I met his father.
This is the one I saw. Okay.
Yeah. Real old G. He invited me to his church once, straight in the hood. Saw everyone from pros to gangsters there, all showing tremendous respect. He treated people off the street as if they were his children. Coach was comfortable in this setting, dealing with the wild. His father made him this way. My outlook on him changed that day. A father never resembles the sons. It is a son that resembles the father. Lesson: great leaders inspire, not clone. Many coaches from Belichick's tree face the same issue. They all try to be him. Same with the Pete Carroll system. Good, but authentic to him. Good luck, Coach Canales.
That was very confusing for me. That was a confusing journey of a tweet for me.
It certainly was.
Or are you saying, wait, what? Like, are you?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, if the son resembles the father, don't they resemble one another?
Right. The wording on the thing about what he said about guys that come off of Pete Carroll's tree was so clunky that it was hard to figure out exactly what it was he was saying. Was this a shot, or was this a...
Also, was he like, it seemed like he was saying like they don't try to copy, and it's like, but it sounds like what you're saying is that you loved him because of what his dad did. Right.
If I am reading that correctly, I think Saleh had a short run under Carroll before going to the 49ers. So I think his point that he was making was Dan Quinn, Robert Saleh, DaveCanales all come off of the Pete Carroll tree, and rather than doing the Bill Belichick thing,
right,
like
where they try to replicate, like, even the persona of
like the way Matt Patricia treated the media in Detroit because he saw Bill Belichick do it. Dave Canales has been capable of creating the kind of culture that he saw and still being himself.
Well, and I think like too, what you take out of that, maybe what I can extrapolate a little bit is like you take the lessons of like maybe things that, for instance, if you're doing the dad analogy, like the parts of your dad's personality, maybe he would wish that he didn't have, and you try to like tweak that and make sure you don't let those things affect you the same way. And so it's like an improved model essentially of the thing, like take the things that worked, use those, value those, and maybe throw out the things that you were like, not so sure, tweak it, make it something that feels right for you. Yeah. Like, I'm sure they're like, because Canales doesn't strike me as like ultra cheesy Pete Carroll. And I don't think, and maybe that's part of what he means too. Like, you can't be Pete Carroll. Like, you cannot be that like cheesy ass person and like try to replicate that because it's going to read as phony.
Especially if you are coming to your first NFL head coaching job without the same sort of resume Pete Carroll brought to Seattle, right?
They'd be like, who is this goofy asshole?
Exactly. Last one. This tweet was the next day. I believe this was Saturday.
Oh, another one. Okay. That would have made more sense for me maybe because I literally reread that like 3 times. I was also tired, but I was like, huh?
Yeah. All right, here's the last one. Younger players, bigger contracts, different values. Hires like DaveCanales and Mike McDaniel signal a new era in football. It's not just about pedigree anymore. The X factor is connecting with a younger, disconnected generation of men. Today's coach needs more than just X's and O's. They need EQ as much as football IQ. The ability to connect is becoming the new competitive edge. For instance, Deion Sanders isn't just coaching, he's revolutionizing, bringing pro swagger to college ball. Proof that personality and connection can be as powerful as tradition.
Well,
yeah, I was about to say he loses
a little on Deion because the problem with Deion is that like once the flash subsides and those guys are looking for like the connection, unless you're like seemingly, at least from the outside, far be it for me, in case someone gets mad, like if you're not one of his dudes, he's not making that emotional connection with you. The same way you hear about like coaches that are like truly great coaches will talk to a lot of them will still talk to a walk-on.
Sure.
Like and know about the walk-on's life in the same, whereas like Deion does not know who the walk-ons are.
No, look at literally the first actual regular season game that McDaniels is coaching the Dolphins, and he is giving Tua shit like they grew up together. Right. And I think there is a certain element of
it's a vibe.
It's a vibe. It's a
looseness. It has to be a genuine one or else it's not going to work.
Right. You have to, I think, win over a lot of these young dudes, particularly ones that come out of systems like Alabama. I would say Michigan was probably this way. Certainly when Urban Meyer was still the coach, Ohio State was this way. These like places where maybe you have the evolution of that dictator head coach that we do from the 80s and 90s, but still like this is the way we do things. Sort of
There's
environment.
Still a culture. It's just not like a monoculture, I guess, in the sense of like it's all about this one guy.
Yeah.
Like look, it was in those places.
One of my dear friends covers the Jaguars pretty regularly. My friend Mia O'Brien, and she said that there have been some off the record conversations that they have had with both Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne about part of what was so different when Doug Peterson came in was that Doug Peterson made it very clear that you are adults. All I can do is give you the plays and I can coach you up. It is up to you to make the decisions that get you from good at this to where you think you should be. Whereas, Dabo Swinney, and I think we saw probably this is the way Urban Meyer coached the Jaguars as well, we're so convinced that it was about timing, it was about route running, it was about whatever to create these little bits of advantage in the NFL, because at the college level, they created these huge advantages. Surely they would work. It's like, no, man, like you're talking about the 1% of the 1% in this league. You have to, more than anything, make sure your dude that you are relying on to make these plays is comfortable enough to make the decisions he has to make.
Yeah. And I think too, like a lot of the rules that, while I don't think they were without merit, and I'm sure coaches still do a version of this, but like, fines if you're like not 10 minutes early to a meeting, like Tom Coughlin used to do and shit like that, or whatever it was, or like getting you in trouble essentially. Like it's almost like getting in trouble with dad or whatever for something silly, or like, when Cam Newton was benched for, what was it? A drive, a possession, or was it a quarter?
It was a possession, right? It was the opening possession.
Because I was blinded by my rage. But
because he didn't wear a tie on the plane.
Like, I respect the way Ron Rivera relates to players as like old school guys go, because I think he gets it in a way that a lot of those guys didn't, in terms of like emotionally connecting with people. But he still had some of that old school stuff of like, we're going to do things this way, we're going to dress like this, we're going to do this, we're going to be on time, blah blah blah, right? And so like that was his way of showing, oh, Cam's no different from anyone else. But like, again, I think coaches understand now, like, you have to treat everyone in a way that's like the best for your entire team. And does that always mean that the same exact rules get applied in the exact same way to every single person? Or does it mean that like, no, actually the way we create accountability is through something a little more adult, instead of just like, be here on time, have your shirt tucked in, whatever other bullshit, you know what I mean?
Well, part of this is the difference between college and pros, but also part of this, I think, is the difference between 94 and 2024 is that I do think a lot of these coaches, and it sounds like Canales is going to come in this way. McDaniels is a really good example. A lot of these coaches come in assuming the guys understand the difference between disciplined and undisciplined and how that can translate to wins and losses. I feel like so many of the old school coaches, the disconnect of those Jaguars with Urban Meyer, maybe the disconnect of the beginning of the season with Frank Reich last year, was about there was no real understanding. I think
Frank Reich had already disconnected.
No, I agree, but I do think part of it is there was just an assumption on the part of those coaches that they were going to have to whip these men into shape or whip these boys into men, maybe. That just isn't realistic.
Or like there's this element there of like, well, they don't have the discipline, or like they don't have X, Y, and Z. And it's like, or they just need someone to like talk to them like adults and give them ways to go win football games, and they can do their best to make that happen and like not put all the pressure on themselves in the world, and like know that, you know what I mean? Like, it was just, these
are the expectations. I'm giving you the tools. Go do it, as opposed to
if you
these are the expectations.
We'll get someone else who can.
Exactly.